Well, hello, hello. We are back again for another Other Ink Thursday. That's where I, Matthew Orr of Wet Ink Games, talk to some other TTRPG creator about their ink. And this episode, I'm joined by Hannah Shaffer of TurtleBun, uh, producers of Questlandia and Noirlandia and Good Dog, Bad Zombie and Mud and the forthcoming Escape from Wonderland. A long catalog. Hannah, thank you so much for being on my interview.
Thank you.
Also a podcaster. You do an amazing podcast called Design Doc, and you and Evan, your design partner, just go through all of your highs and lows of every design. It's an incredible show to listen to, and I definitely want to talk about that today as well. So again, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks so much, Matt.
I like to start my interviews with who like who are you as a designer and where did that come from? And kind of like one of the ways that I ask that question is like, do you remember when you were younger? I'm sure you played games, many people play games, but do you have like a game where you were like, oh, this is like this isn't like here's a ball and we're playing a game. It's like this is a box and inside is a rule sheet and there's like credits on the rule sheet and this is like a discrete thing that is like this is an activity. Do you have like a memory of like your first game in that respect?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I started playing, I grew up playing video games, like the
Oh,
video games of the 90s, and I think probably even some of my first games were on floppy disk. Uh,
amazing.
uh, but so I didn't play role-playing games until much later, like my mid 20s. But in terms of like board games, I mean, I think that I loved some of the more tactile games growing up. I specifically remember especially loving Mousetrap. There was this, and I remember loving like a lot of the setup of games, and often being like a little disappointed by the play, maybe.
Mm. Mousetrap,
So,
that's the whole experience of Mousetrap.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess that's true. The play of Mousetrap isn't that long. But yeah, I love, I mean, ever since I was young, setting up games, like really complicated, finicky setup was my favorite. And then
Mm.
actually playing them, I was like, ah, okay. Which probably is reflected in the role-playing games we design too. I think we often are like really, really into the long, finicky setup parts. So I guess that's carried through.
It's well, you mentioned it may be like I'm thinking about all those games that have like stacks of cards and you've got to put the different piles of tokens out and you get it all set up and shuffle all the decks and the decks are in different parts on the board and you're like, okay, now we can play. And it's like a whole table setting process to like set up one of those
Yeah.
games.
Yeah, it's nice.
One of my favorite games is Touch of Evil, and it's got that exact thing. You've got your miniatures, and they look like the heroes, and you've got your character cards, and there's decks in every corner of the board, and it's a big process to get it going. But I actually want to go back and ask you about the video game thing because like I don't play a lot of I have played video games obviously, but I'm not a video game player. But like there is that kind of like disconnect when you look at the like especially 80s and 90s like boxes that have like such a cool picture of like somebody fighting a dragon or like a starship doing flying through space or whatever, and then you get to the game and it's like
Yeah.
7 pixels in a triangle that are like moving around on a board or
hmm
something like that. Is that maybe this is such a bizarre question, but like is that like prime you for world creation in the role-playing game space because you're like, this is what I want it to look like. This is the experience I want to have on the box art, but then like the play is I have to invent all that because the play is these pixels. I don't
no, I love that. And actually I do think that there's something there. I one of the games that I have a really early memory of, which is funny because I didn't actually get to play it until I was an adult, is this 1995 video game called Phantasmagoria. Is that something that you're familiar with?
I that's not one of the like Giger illustrated ones, is it?
It's
Like
not. No,
okay.
no. It was one of the full motion video games. So like have these recordings of real people like doing these animations on loop. And it's pretty violent. Like even by today's standard, it's like a pretty gruesome game. And I was too young to play it at the time. But we had, I think, one of the King's Quest games that
Yeah.
had a trailer for Phantasmagoria on it. And I remember watching the trailer again and again and again with my sister. And because we were too young to play it, sort of like world building out what the game was like. And then years later as an adult, when I finally got to play it, kind of being fixated on sometimes I'm really interested in like what a game can't do or what a game
Mm.
accidentally does. I mean, in Phantasmagoria, it's the protagonist, Adrian. She and her husband have moved into this spooky mansion. He becomes possessed in the mansion, and she has to escape as he becomes sort of, increasingly more demon possessed. But you can do these things in the game, like, at any point, Adrian can sit down and you could just kind of like sit her down on a bench or a chair. And I always thought it was like so bizarre and funny that like, you could be in sort of the peak uh final scene where she's running from the demon. And as long as you're not in a cutscene, you can kind of just like sit her down and have her observe. Which I think is a really roundabout way of answering the original question that you asked. But sometimes I feel like video games have like accidental world building
Mm.
that wasn't even intended.
Yeah. I mean, that is, I'm reminded of you're gonna hear like my fanboyness come out so often because like I'm reminded of your like episode from a while ago called like you can kill a king but you can't make a marinara.
Oh gosh,
And
I remember the title and I don't even remember what we talked
well,
about.
but you talked about exactly that kind of thing where it's like there's rules for combat and there's rules for assassination, but like there's no cooking rules in a
Yes.
typical RPG.
Yeah.
Like you can kill the king in this RPG because you can skullduggery your way into the palace and you can fight the guards and you roll for damage, but then like if you want to make a meal, like there's maybe a chart of like how much a night at an inn costs,
Uh,
like in gold, and
yeah.
that's like what are what are games giving you that you can actually use? And the idea that you've got this, they wanted you to be able to sit down and like look at the room, probably because they had like really detailed, I'm imagining, really detailed like photorealistic spreads of these
Oh
rooms
yeah.
in 3D
Yeah.
render or whatever. And so if you sit down and look, but then like if you could sit down and look like during the climax too, that's sort of like it makes sense. It's just it's this weird possibility space where you're like, when can you sit down and look at any time? Because that's what the rules say, and it could be at
Yeah.
even in inopportune moments. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't remember that that's what that episode was about. So, I mean, it is something that I think about all the time. Every time you make a rule about what a game can do, you're like also kind of saying what it can't do. Yeah.
yeah. So I had Evan on about a year ago talking about specifically Mud, and we also talked about Escape from Wonderland, and he told the story at the time about how you as creative partners got going with setting up a community space, and then that eventually through various permutations transforming into your current game design partnership. And so I don't want to ask you to tell that story again, um, because I'll put a link to the episode and Evan can talk about that. But like, I don't know what is. I do want to ask you about kind of like your perspective on like kind of forming the ideas and the excitement that we've been talking about here, like from early age. Like, why does that get expressed for you in like I want to make write games and publish books and have people play them, and like what kind of keeps you currently at least going with like the next project, like why is that the expression of all the things, you could have been a video game designer or an artist or a poet or whatever. Being creative is so limitless, but like what keeps attracting you back to like I'm going to make an RPG book, that has 80 pages of suggestions of how to live your life for the next 4 hours, like what keeps
Yeah.
attracting you back to that form?
Yeah. Oh, that's I love you're asking such good questions. I mean, Evan might have said this, but I feel like we both kind of fell into making tabletop role-playing games specifically a little bit accidentally. We were both pretty like newly graduated from college, started this community space in our town, and we're hoping to make a video game together and had gotten really far into uh, I'll say the design without the coding.
Mm, mm.
The entire sort of arc of the game and the story was designed. And then when it came to the technology and actually making it, we were both a little bit like up against some uh, limitations of our expertise. But we started this community center, and on opening day, a bunch of the local ttrpg designers showed up. I mean, we live in Western Massachusetts. There's a bunch of folks here who are like, Vincent and Meg Baker live
Mm.
around here, Epi Ravachol and Emily Care Boss, Joshua A.C. Newman, like
Yeah, those
some
are all
people.
these are all the names. These are all names I
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And I was so, I had heard of tabletop role-playing games, but had never actually played one. And they showed up and we started to like talk about making games. And uh, I don't know, it was like the perfect combination of a lot of things that I loved. Like I wanted to tell stories. I've always wanted to write or be a writer, even though I don't think I'm like great at it. And um the idea of just like being able to make a game where the story is a little written at the table really appealed to me. And I guess we do keep coming back to it. I mean, in some ways, it's just like we've put in all of this work and sort of like tended to this thing that we're creating over the years.
Yeah.
And I sometimes don't think that it's like I don't know if role-playing games are the thing that I have like a special or like magical affinity for, but we have put so much love into it that
Yeah.
it's not just like a sort of ball rolling down the hill that's keeping me going. Like there's a lot of love there.
Yeah. It's sort of I don't know, it's the expertise. You talked about the not knowing the coding stuff before. It's like you've produced, a dozen games at this point or something like that. And it's like you've got experience there and like
Yeah.
you know the shape of them, you've got contacts in printing, it's like it is kind of a momentum or experience at least. It's like yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, every time I hope we get a little bit better at it every time, if not in the design, then in sort of production. I mean, we're always sort of learning and imagining ways that we can do it like a little bit better the next
Yeah.
time. So,
Gosh, I was just at a local convention this weekend. It's a new con here in my town, and it was really great. It was a great weekend. That's it was we met a lot of it kind of is the I'm sorry to explain this goes it'll
no,
get back
that's
to a
okay.
question in a second, but like it was a lot of like really positive things because there was basically two different communities. There's a community of like the RPG and board game people, and that organization in my town is called Nerd Louisville. And then there's another group that's also based in Louisville that they run these mega games where they have like 50 players in a room together and they're doing a model UN and then aliens attack and somebody's got the nuclear codes and have the people invested in mechs to fight the nuclear missiles and whatever. They're doing a very large scale game. And that's so these two organizations got together to have like a bunch of board gaming and vendors and these mega games happening at the same time. And there was a lot of cross-pollination between like, well, I've never, what do you got for sale on this table? Because I've been
Yeah,
doing this
yeah.
mega game and like, and it didn't it so anyway, it was a very fruitful weekend for connections and for, having a local con. It was really fun. But the thing that I was leading up to was like talking about getting a little bit better every time. Like people were asking me about we've got wet ink. We've got 5 games now that use the same game system. And so I was trying to show people how to play it. And I'm showing them the character sheet. And I'm like, actually, don't look at this book that I'm trying to explain to you the setting
Yeah.
of. Here, let me get my newest book where we've got a much better graphically designed character sheet, which is much more informational about like how the different things work. And it's like, I literally was saying what you just said to people where like I know we have gotten better. I can show you between these two character sheets that are like 5 books apart at 5 books and I don't know uh, 7 years apart in design, like we've refined the system. It's better. You could better understand this character sheet than you can this one that we did back in, 2019. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Oh, yeah.
feel that for sure.
And there's so many parts in what we do, like in making tabletop role-playing games, because it's the writing and then it's the game design, but also it's the visual design. Sometimes we'll be making like the smallest change on a character sheet, and we're like, oh my gosh, this changed everything, and how easy this was to like understand. Um, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah. And you get I somebody who's working on another game with us is they sent like another update of like, what if it's like the symbols aren't just little check marks, but they're like pluses. So you get the idea that you're plussing up I'm like, great idea. Never thought of that. No one has ever
Hmm.
suggested that or thought of that, but great idea. Like we'll put that on the character sheet for that game because that
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense. Um, and yeah, other perspectives keep getting better and stuff like that.
yeah.
Um, Okay, so I want to try to get awkward transition, non-transition here. I do want to ask you because about a year, roughly about a year ago, is when you had Escape from Wonderland on the thing on crowdfunding, and you were talking about it. You kind of brainstormed it on your podcast, which was an incredible set of episodes where you kind of like invented a new game, and then now you've been working on like the idea, realizing the ideas, right? And if people listen to Design Doc, they'll know all this. So, like, I don't know, skip ahead a few minutes. But for other people that maybe you only know TurtleBun from my previous interview with Evan, like, where is Escape from Wonderland at this point? And not like in a, I very much not in a like, it's been a year, where is it now? Like, but like, like, what's the what successes have you had and like where is the game advanced to and stuff like that? Tell us what the update is because obviously at the time it was more of an idea when I talked
Hmm.
to Evan a year ago than it is now. It's much further along.
Yeah. Yeah, so Escape from Wonderland is our evil amusement park horror game. You play a bunch of people who are trapped in an amusement park called Wonderland as it becomes sort of scarier and more menacing throughout the day. Uh, a year ago, so this was one where we had launched the Kickstarter. I think that part of our goal was kind of to try to return to some of what I remembered from the earlier days of Kickstarter of like, we have built this like audience and people who support our games and know that even though we have a history of running late, that we do deliver on what we make. So this was our sort of like attempt to kickstart a little bit of a concept without having the game finished, which at this point we'll talk more about it at Design Doc at some point. I don't think it was necessarily the right decision because the game has changed so much. At when we launched the Kickstarter, the hope was to make basically a hack of our game Questlandia, but this horror hack. And through playtesting, we sort of realized that Questlandia is a game that has a lot of player choice. Basically, with every role, you kind of have, you just have choice over, even if the results are bad, you even have choices in your bad outcomes. And to make this successful horror game, we were like, oh, we actually really need to take away choice. So the game has just totally transformed since the Kickstarter. It's an entirely different game. Uh, Nobody seems to have an issue with that, but hopefully that's in part because we just are pretty consistent with our monthly updates and tracking where the game is and what it's become. So we're both really happy. Um, there's a cat scratching under my door, so I apologize if it's rustling.
I hadn't
We're
hadn't heard that, so it's
Okay,
probably
good.
fine.
Good. I hope there's some sound dampening happening. Yeah, we're both really happy with where it is, but it is a totally different game than it was when we first started out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is, you do have your monthly updates and you've got obviously your podcast and you've got like a Patreon where people get like the daily work logs and stuff like that. So like this is all stuff that I know from listening to your show. But like I think I really like what you said a moment ago about like if you've built that community and like hey internet friends, hey supporters of our products, like we're going to go on a journey together and this is what it's going to be. And that is sort of like, an older school crowdfunding pitch, but it also is like if your audience knows you and knows what the history of the games that you've done, it's like it's a good ride to be on, right? Is like let's see where this goes.
Hopefully, yeah.
Uh, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, it's I have mixed feelings about it sort of now a year later. First because we are running so late, and second because I would never want to like take advantage of anybody's
mm,
good graces. Like I feel like we have earned this trust, and looking at our, the Kickstarter that we launched for the game a year ago, I'm like, okay, we were a little bit hasty. But there's pressures of the world too.
sure.
When you are, when this is a big part of your living, making the next game is really important. So there are things that I think that if we were launching it now, we would do differently. But I also really appreciate that there are folks who have come along for every single game that we've made, know that we're often behind, but that we do make the games. So.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a game that was delivered this year that was like, it was almost exactly 3 years from when we were inspired to make the game before the game was delivered, and
Mhm.
about halfway through that time is when we ran the crowdfunding campaign, and so it felt like we've just lived with this too long. We have to get it out, like, and you know, part of it is at every stage there were delays in getting it written, and then the layout took a very long time. It's our biggest game in that series so far, but like yeah, you do feel that pressure of like, or I do, of like, people are on the crowdfunding page and they're like, where is this game? And it's late. And what are we going to get in compensation for it not being delivered in 8 months, like you said? And it's like, nothing. You're going to get the game. You're going to get the game that we're happy with. It's not going to be undone when you get it. It's going or incomplete when you get it. It's going to be done and complete and everything there. And that's what you're getting, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to not feel pressured, if somebody is upset. And I think that it's hard too when it's like if somebody's eager and excited for the game, but they're expressing that in disappointment,
Mm,
that affects me. That feeling really affects me. And it makes me want to work harder and faster and do better when that's working under that pressure isn't really the best way to work, because often
yeah.
that is kind of how I'm already working behind the scenes. So, uh, but for us, the answer to that has just sort of been like really consistent with our communication, even if we're behind
Mm,
where we want to be, to, just make sure that we show up every month and say, like, we're still here. We're behind where we want to be. Because I think there can be a little bit of an instinct to hide when something
mm.
isn't going to plan, because
Yeah.
it's hard to disappoint people and to say like things aren't going to plan. Uh, but we do try to kind of fight against that uh, social fear and say, hello, things aren't going to plan.
Well, I think and this is sort of one of the other questions I had for you was like fighting against the social fear and just saying like, "Hello, we're here. This is not going to plan." That's almost literally exactly what your podcast does. So like, is that like does it get easier knowing that you've been admitting all of your, like, you're very open, you and Evan, I feel, are very open in your process and your struggles in your show, and which is one of the reasons why since I started listening to the show, I'm like, this is such a great show, and like, um, because you really hear like, uh, you're very generous with yourselves on your episodes, and so it makes for a compelling listen, in that respect. But like, is that practice make it easier, or does it like only? I don't know. Is it like, oh, this will? Do you ever like? you're ever like struggling to design something and you're like, oh, this will make a great episode where we can talk about how bad this is going. Like
Oh
I don't
yeah.
I don't know. It's
Uh,
that like feedback loop between your work and your audience, and then this other thing that you do as a podcast, which is also about like you need struggles in order to talk about them on the podcast in some respects. Like I don't know. I don't know. Is it? I don't know. Is it? It's like everything is productive, I guess, in the sense that you can talk about it on your show. So
yeah.
does that
Um,
contribute to your feelings about the work in any way, or is that just sort of an extra thing?
yeah, I think it definitely contributes to the episodes of Design Doc that we do. I mean, as long as things aren't going so badly that there's like a crisis, it
Uh-huh.
often is, I mean, it's like this is the work that we're doing from week to week anyway, is talking about game design or production challenges or things not going as expected. So with Design Doc, if something doesn't go to plan, we're like, this will make a great episode. I think it, I have to be careful, I think, about thinking that it works the other way too. Whereas, like, if something that, like, things that maybe are fun for people who love Design Doc are not necessarily fun for people who backed our game, um, who might not listen to Design Doc, where we're like,
Yeah.
ha, it's so fun that things didn't go to plan. So um, I think I do mentally separate the two a little bit because I mean, one of the things about Kickstarter or BackerKit is that, they do also function as a little bit of a like platform to reach new people just on their own. Like sometimes people find the project who didn't follow our work in other places. And for those people, I'm like, oh, I want to do a really good job. But also, I don't want to take advantage of the people who listen to Design Doc and are patient and understanding. So um, ultimately, I just want to do a good job. But
Yeah.
Design Doc has been a good experiment over the years in just like speaking honestly about what we're doing and sometimes maybe even risking disappointing people by talking about a game that might not ever get made or talking about another project we're working on that people might not be as interested in.
Yeah. Yeah. It does it do you feel like it serves as sort of like I mean, I don't know, do you ever go back and like you said earlier in this episode you didn't remember the content of a previous episode, only the title, but like does it ever serve as like a oh, I'm gonna go back and listen to that episode and like know thank you past Hannah for like talking about this thing because I can see now that I how far I've come or I mean, is it I don't know, do you use it like that as sort of like a where have we been and where are we going check-in thing or just knowing that you've got all these episodes recorded sort of is its own sort of momentum or something that can keep you moving forward? I don't know.
Yeah, I never go back and listen to old ones. I feel like for me, it's like the self cringe where I'm like, no,
Hmm.
I don't want to hear it. Which I think that probably if I listened, I would actually be like a lot gentler, and would feel like maybe even sort of heartwarmed or charmed by some of the stuff that we talked about years ago. It can feel good though. Like if I scroll back and see that we've done over 100 episodes now, and also that our pace has picked up, entirely thanks to Rob Abrazato, who's our editor now. When we were just doing the show with me and Evan, and I was editing, sometimes I'd only get out an episode like every other month. So looking back, it's like I can see the progress and the things, it's a nice timeline to track
Hmm.
like how far we've come. But I never go back and listen.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, uh, well, we kind of ended up talking about Design Doc, but I was this is ostensibly the section where we're supposed to be talking about Escape from Wonderland. So
Oh
before we
yeah,
move on,
yeah.
is there anything else you want to say about Escape from Wonderland to kind of that I didn't ask you about, or that you other things you want to tell, or recent successes, or anything? I don't know. What's your what anything else you want to say about that particular game?
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, it was a really small Kickstarter for us and smaller than we expected. I mean, I think that we kickstarted it right around the election last year, which
Hmm.
was unfortunate. It ended up just being timed where the Kickstarter launched one think it was 1 week before I ended up getting a full-time job. So there were like a lot of things that were working against us and the campaign. But in some ways, it being so small has been kind of a blessing because it's allowed us, like, nobody's pressuring us.
Hmm.
People have been really understanding, and it's actually kind of allowed us to make the game much more complicated. Complicated is the wrong word. It is a much deeper and bigger and ambitious game than we had even kickstarted. And we're not letting the scale of uh, the Kickstarter, like, the number amount scale kind
Yeah.
of determine how ambitious we want the game to be. So I'm really proud of the game right now, and I hope people like it.
Yeah, I mean everything that I've seen about it keeps me as someone who backed the project, everything that I see about it coming out is like, ooh, that sounds great. That sounds
Oh,
great.
thank you.
So at least, sample size of one, like I'm on board for how it's developed and I do think, yeah, ambition is, you know, a good way to describe it because you are trying to pack a lot into a relatively small package, inviting the players to bring a lot of stuff and then experience a lot of things and then try to wrap it all up. I mean, it is a ambitious design to lead people through an experience like that. So
Yeah, horror is hard. We're definitely learning a lot about how to make a horror game. So,
right. As somebody who has apparently one of my one of my first games is a horror game, and I don't really consider myself a horror person, but I've been told like, what do you mean you made this game? And I was like, I mean, I guess I don't know. I just wrote down how bad World War I was, and that's all I
yeah, and then
did. Like
just
I didn't invent anything beyond that, but yeah, so I don't know. I don't know that I have cracked it either. Definitely we've kind of become we've got several horror games as like our sort of, not exactly all of our games, but like we have several of them. And, people love that. And, I've only designed the one. The others are by other designers, but there's something people like. But it is kind of a trick to like, how do you make people feel those things?
yeah.
In a relatively safe way or whatever. It's a trick. It's a whole thing. It's a genre unto
It's a whole
itself.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And lots of different types of horror too. So,
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course. Um, all right. Uh, we've been talking for a little while, and I want to maybe do a mini workshop with you. And you were talking in your episode 101, which was the not the most recent episode, but like the fairly recent episode, and you kind of as a sort of a joke or just the obvious thing, you're like, oh, it's like a 101 of like a course 101
mhm.
of like doing games and things and of how to be this how to be a role-playing game publisher. And you talked about a lot in that episode, but one of the things that you mentioned was like future collaborations and things you want to work with and people you want to talk to. And you also mentioned in passing that like one of your goals was to increase your listener count to Design Doc and stuff like that. And I have for a while thought like, oh, I need to get this interview show on One Shot Podcast Network because then I'll have made it if I'm like getting it out there on Design Doc. And then you are on the One Shot Podcast Network and you're like, we got to increase our listener count. And I'm like, oh no, they've made it,
Oh,
but they haven't
no.
made it. Like I thought they had already made it. And so like this obviously these are my feelings, but uh you don't have to accept any of what I'm throwing out there, but like um so like I don't know. There is such a we talked about a little bit about the complexity of doing a crowdfunding and like who you owe your time to based on they gave you their $25 or whatever, I mean we didn't say that literally, but that's kind of the subtext of what we were talking about. But then doing these other creative projects like running a podcast, and I do this interview show, which I love doing, but it doesn't have the like immediate like the Venn diagram between like people who buy my role-playing games and people who listen to my interviews with other role-playing game creators is
hmm
is very small.
Yeah.
Because I look at my YouTube view numbers and they're all very small and like so I'm like I need to I need to figure out how to like broaden my audience, and or broaden my listenership, and that's why I was thinking about like, what if I did this as a podcast instead of a YouTube series, and like then, so I'm thinking about like the value of all these other things that I do. I really like the video production stuff and talking to designers, and I interview people or not interview, well, I do these the game jams at cons and stuff like that. But like then there's like show me the line where that is increasing my like dollar, what's the dollar value of like the
Yeah.
work that I'm putting in, and I can't get away from that because it's the thing that I'm doing, right? Trying to make a livelihood is like you said before. So I don't know. I find myself in a similar, what I'm saying is I find myself in a similar position to what you and Evan were talking about in your recent episode about like sort of like what do we do next and where do we go? So I thought maybe we could, I don't know, workshop some stuff. Like I don't know if you want to like talk about like being on a podcast network, like because one of my things was like, should I start a podcast network? I'll get I'll get the podcast that I like to listen to, and we can start a thing, and then because then it's about selling, because we've got this many listeners, we can sell ads, and that's like a whole business. And like, I don't necessarily want to become a podcast magnate, but like, I also want to keep doing this thing. Like, something's going to support the. Anyway, I've said a whole bunch. I'm kind of
Yeah.
flailing here, but like, I don't know. What are some things that you would like to try or like to see or I don't know. What are your goals in that respect about like keeping sort of multiple tracks that kind of support each other, but only sort of support each other going forward? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it for us feels like a little bit like throwing something at a wall and
Mm,
seeing what sticks. We made this agreement with each other like a few years ago during the pandemic, where when we were kind of thinking about like what kind of games do people like? Like, how could we get more people to buy our games? What's a sort of games adjacent side hustle that we should be doing? Like, Evan's an artist. Should Evan be making like custom character portraits for people? And we at least made the agreement with each other that whatever we do, it has to be something that we already enjoy doing.
mm,
And that's, separate from the question of like sometimes you need a day job that's separate and you don't enjoy, but at least for RPGs and our creative work, it has to be something that we enjoy doing. So, uh, sometimes I think in terms of, what it looks like to get out there more widely, it limits us because for example, I think that we should be running more games online or maybe streaming or maybe doing stuff on YouTube, and both of us are super allergic to having our faces
mm,
anywhere. Like we're just like really camera shy generally, and it's a lot of work and effort for both of us to be like, okay, we're gonna do something with our faces. So that's one, and it's tough because also, I mean, I don't know if you've noticed that like if you post a picture on social media, like if you have your bright, smiling, shining face with your game, people like it generally a lot more than if you just have like a flat picture of your game. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's been a balance for us of
yeah.
being like, okay, we have these goals for growth first because we want more people to play our games because we like them and this makes us happy. Also
Hmm.
because it would be great to be able to like sustain ourselves financially doing this work. Um, so yeah, so the first question, that's a long way of saying the first question that we always ask ourselves is like, what would we sort of be willing to do? What's a little bit of a push? But we should do it, which getting our faces out is one of those things. And what's like something that we're just like, no, absolutely not. This would be uncomfortable and awkward and feel really strange, even if we knew it helped us. That doesn't really answer your question that well.
No,
But
well, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
it's like sort of a that at least has been sort of like a guiding principle of like
Yeah.
before we even ask like, okay, so what is that thing? That's sort of our guiding principle of like, is it something that we would already enjoy, or is it something that we wouldn't necessarily enjoy, but like we could do it?
So I forget if I talked, I don't think I mentioned this to Evan, but a year ago, but your episode from a while ago about Founder Energy, you did the Founder Olympics, the Founder Energy Olympics.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a great listen. It's a hilarious episode. You brought a bunch of escalatingly weird ideas to the table and
Yeah.
discussed them about whether or not you could actually do them. And when I heard that episode, I was like, okay, so this needs to be like a real thing. Like we need to get all of like I could think of like various teams of like designers that I would want to have in the Founder Olympics and I don't know if you set it up like Survivor so that you've got elimination or if it's like and there would be like a panel of judges who are like judging the thing and then like all of these like ridiculous game pitches almost like Shark Tank are like all recorded and then you have this sort of like media a media event where it's like all of these TTRPG creators are going to all be on this competition to like win the Founder Energy Olympics and like that would be fun and it would involve all these people and hopefully cross promote each group's audience with each other and stuff like that. And but then I'm like, but who would want to do this? I don't know. Like this is like I don't have the production skills
Yeah.
currently to like orchestrate that. But then like you always have to like you said you kind of have to like set your sight about like well, what am I willing to do and like what would be there. So what would be the next thing that I can learn to do that would be promotional, or advancing of my skills and my talents and like also then my reputation. So I
Yeah.
don't know. That's one idea that I have about like this would be fun to do. It would be fun to do. No, aside from whether or not it actually creates promotional buzz around itself, I don't know. But like,
Yeah. I mean, collaboration is definitely, anything that involves other people or conversations even that involve other
mm,
people, I think are good. And that's something that you're doing. And it's, we always appreciate it. We're always like, oh, wow, Wet Ink Games is like so supportive and engaged. So we notice it, and I hope that other people notice it. Yeah, because it's, staying siloed is
mm,
hard. I think that also, like, I know we were pretty siloed during the pandemic because of first just the world was, and also a lot of people were sad.
yeah,
And now getting back out there, we kind of are coming to terms with the fact that we self-isolated a little bit. And, if we do want to get more people listening to the show or playing our games, that we really have to like put in some of the work to make a community, whatever that word, in the abstract sense of the word.
yeah. I think. I'm looking at, I wrote down a list of like people that I sort of think of as like, ooh, it'd be great to collaborate with them on something. And it occurs to me that like, because Wet Ink has done sort of transitioned from like Brandon and I writing all of our games, which was like our first 3 or 4 books, and well, really only our first two book. Well, really only our first book was like just Brandon and I. But then like we've had collaborators, and then we're at the stage now where like we get pitches from people, and we're not involved in the design of games at all. We're only functioning as publishers. So like some of these are like. I would love to publish like a Jason Morningstar game or like an Alex Roberts game or Jason Alex come pitch me something but like you know, there's other people who like her name's Laura Simpson that she did a game called
Mm-hmm.
Companion's
Companion's
Tale
Tale, yeah.
a while ago, and like I've reached out, I've sent messages to the Sweet Potato Games, and like like I have not made contact with this person, but I'm like, your game was great, and it could be in print still. Like let's figure out your company, my company. Let's figure out how to keep your game in print, and what would that look like between the whatever, like. But those emails went unanswered, right? So there's like lots of different things that I think of as like possibilities for Wet Ink. That then, but then as far as I understand, like you and Evan are like pretty much the only two, you've not done that side of it before where your TurtleBun is publishing other people's work and stuff like that. I don't, is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, that's right. We've done a few like in the past, folks who have been stretch goal writers
Mm,
on like there's a number of people who wrote Noirlandia settings, like these quick start settings that was great. Generally we don't publish other people's things. And uh yeah, I would love to like, collaborate with more people. I know that that personally I'm like a really bad co-game designer.
mm,
I'm like not great to game design with. I'm very bad at articulating ideas, which can be frustrating when another person, it can be frustrating if like something isn't quite gelling for me and
mm.
I'm like, I don't like this thing, but all I can say is that I don't like it, and that's not constructive. Like that's not, and Evan and I know each other so well that I can say to Evan, like, I hate it. It's stinky, which is not something that I would ever say to somebody that I had like a professional working relationship with. But
Right, right.
I mean, in terms of having more people on Design Doc and in terms of like having settings for our games, that's something that I would love to do more of. And Laura, I think Laura and Laura's partner Dev were writers on a supplement that we had done for Damn the Man Save the Music many
All
years
right.
ago.
All right.
So, not recently. So, I don't have like a secret in.
Well, but that's, I mean, at least, yeah, I've sent Dev an email. That is as far as I've gotten. Uh,
Yeah, people's lives, I think especially people who were sort of like making games when Evan and I were starting to make games. I think that a lot of those folks like are very like deep in their life right now. Like they
mm,
have children. I think Laura's a city councilor now or has done some she's doing something in local politics. So
it's
we're
great.
like in the soup of life.
Yeah. So who are some of the people that you think of as like, if you, who would you want? Do you have anyone that you look up to in the, or look not necessarily up to, but like across to in the industry that you want to contribute or do you want to collaborate with? Like would be fun to do, if you get to the stage where you're like, all right, you know, I don't know, Richard Ruane design, tell us what the Roseville Beach, seaside resort version of I don't know, I'm making up a thing of Escape from Wonderland is. It's not Wonderland, it's the specific other park that is, that's set in his game or whatever. I don't know if there's something like that who are some people that you might want to work with.
Yeah. Uh I would love to work with Quinn Murphy. Um, Quinn had done a setting for Noirlandia, and he's awesome. He's going to be at PAX with us this year.
Okay.
And Quinn is so creative and talented. I feel intimidated because he's a good writer and just so like so creative. So I would love to work with Quinn, at least talk to Quinn on a podcast. Oh gosh, and it's like there's so many people, especially for writing. Like so many people are just such good writers. I mean, Alex obviously is wonderful. It would be great to do something with Alex Roberts.
Yeah.
And this might sound a little bit weird, but Evan and I have been going to a lot of local like maker markets recently,
Hmm.
and at maker markets, sometimes our RPGs are kind of out of place, but we're meeting people who are like textile artists or making lino cuts or
Mm.
are like, oh, I do murals. And I know this is kind of like sidestepping RPGs, but I would love to work with people like a little bit outside of RPGs a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because we are a pretty like small group. Like a lot of us know each other, and I would love to like step outside and be like, yeah, we worked with this lino cut artist from our town for all of the illustrations in this game.
That sounds
And
awesome, actually. I
yeah,
mean,
right. And then you're making like community connections too,
hmm
which I think is really, we feel like it's something that we really need right now.
yeah, yeah.
What about
We
you?
uh well, what I'm thinking about is like lino cut, like who I know that does lino cuts, and
Yeah,
like
right?
what if one of my games was like redone with all lino cut illustrations instead? Like that'd be amazing. That's a really amazing look. I mean, I think we do um we because neither one of Brandon and I are an artist, both of us are the kind of kids that were like we had do like dueling sketchbooks in like high school. We would like both draw the same robots and fantasy wizard men like when we were in high school. But like that's so different from like I've got to hire a professional illustrator to like do the cover of a book. But like we like to say that we're an art forward company and we hire, like find a good artist, ask them what their rate is, pay them that rate to get their art in your book, and so we've worked with a ton of really talented artists already,
Mhm.
for a lot of our stuff, and at least two of our games were inspired by art that our artists had done on their own, and
Oh,
then we
cool.
are like, this is amazing. Let us make a game around this piece of art.
Yeah.
You've got this body of art, and we'll put some rules in there, and so I don't know. Like I mean, the mentioning the sad. I've not done a we've never done a sci-fi game. So I'm thinking about we're always like, what is our first sci-fi game going to be? Because I generally like science fiction. So I'm just thinking about like things like, you know, Jason Morningstar did Desperation, and like I've talked to him before, and his business partner Steve is somebody that I could, get a hold of on Discord if I wanted to, and Bully Pulpit does amazing work, but it's like, okay, what is the like we want to do Desperation, but it's like Dead Space. And you're gonna do your sci-fi thing, and it's a bad situation in space. Like, are you interested in that, Jason? That might be fun. Um, I think about I think there's a lot of people who are really, I don't know. I wrote down a list of things, but I said there, that like thinking about like there's some other people who Chris Spivey is somebody that, he's published a couple historical settings. Like he did Harlem Unbound and Haunted West, and those are both historical settings with horror themes, which is like two things that Wet Ink does a lot of. And there's definitely like I emailed Chris a while ago for a project that he was not able to take on, but like one of these times it's like, hey Chris, like what do you got? What do
Oh,
you got?
yeah.
What historical
Yeah.
haunted place have you not shown
Been able
the
to explore. Yeah.
right, right. Like,
Yeah.
is it this place? Because let's do that book. Um,
Yeah.
so I think there are people that I think of, and I mean, I see like there's certain things like that. Like, Brandon and I are both like white dudes, and so like there's sort of a somebody reaching out to somebody like Chris Spivey, who's like, award-winning designer, but like, known for his like exploration of like blackness in like he set a game in Harlem for a reason, right? I mean, that's what he's doing. And we've worked with, Banana and Sen on their, Zhongxi game. And so like to the extent that us as publishers are able to like, we've got these connections, we've established a reputation that Wet Ink is this stuff. So like who's we gonna like point to next is like, okay, now you tell a story that, and so I think that's something important to us as and my father-in-law is an immigrant, and Brandon's mother is an immigrant. So like we have these sort of the project of being American, right, is this thing that both Brandon and I see as sort of like always being renewed by new people coming in. And so again, that relates to some of the projects we've already done, but again, that idea of like, okay, who's going to get the spotlight next about like you tell your story about something that you've dealt with, or and I don't know what that so that's the context of like somebody like working with like Chris Spivey, which would be like, oh, that'd be a great thing. Like, here's to the extent that we have a platform, please step up on it and say what you have to say would
Yeah.
be pretty great.
Yeah.
Um,
It's really good to be able to talk to people who are bringing different lived experience to genre fiction also,
Yeah,
because it's really easy to, I feel like, see like a sci-fi game to just be like, this is what a sci-fi game looks like, or this is what fantasy looks like. So yeah. And
right.
I have, my limited, I mean, I have my lived experience of what it looks like when I make a sci-fi game, but yeah, being able to work with other people and uh, platform their work is great.
Yeah. Something something I look forward to. All right. I have a couple other things I want to suggest to you as far as like recommendations. So our friend Bridget Jeffries, who's done a couple writings for us, she has a channel called Symphony Entertainment. That's like her whole brand that she's built. And it's only horror. It's streaming. They do the streaming games. They only do horror games. That's the
Oh,
thing that they
cool.
love. So when you're ready for a stream of Escape from Wonderland, go get Bridget Jeffries to be
Okay.
your hostess with the mostess over there with her like entire crew of people who just love to tell sad stories
Uh,
about people going insane. And
awesome. Yeah. Oh, which is it's what Escape from Wonderland is about.
right. So that's my recommendation to you about like some other people to connect with. And
Thank you.
if you don't know Symphony Entertainment's channel, like go check it out or whatever. It's a Twitch, and then they, like the standard thing. They stream on Twitch and then live or VODs posted to YouTube and stuff like that. And they've got a very
Cool.
active community over there. But it's very focused on that people love to tell the sad stories. They do a lot of Cthulhu stuff, so it's all, everybody eventually goes insane.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, perfect.
yeah. Um, yeah. And uh somebody else I'll recommend that I have gotten to work with is Seda does a podcast called Sayla is her name. She does a podcast called Folio, and it is a just as like a guest, you or Evan or both, she plays a solo game and then gets two other people to play the same solo game, and everybody sends their
Oh,
recordings in to, and then the editing, she does the editing and like then produces this thing where you're like hearing three different stories alternating scenes between each other, and but they're all they're progressing through the same game and like reading sometimes the same prompts but then reacting to them differently because that's how people do. And so I think that's a place where I would love to hear either you or Evan on
that's
that
really
Folio.
cool. Oh, wow. I love that. What a cool idea.
I
Also,
know,
seems like
I know.
really challenging editing. So
Yes,
props
also
to
that
that
like
editing.
I
Wow.
had her on the show, and that's the one thing we talked about a lot was like it's a very it she likes the the editing is exciting, but also that's where all the
Yeah.
work is,
Wow.
or not all the work, but like a lot of the work. So I don't know. That I invite you to collaborate with these people that I've worked with
Thank
because
you.
they were fantastic experiences and good people. So I don't know if you have any for sharing information that you have. Who have you worked with that you might recommend?
Oh gosh. I mean, like I said, we've been pretty we've been a little insular, which is
Yeah.
some of it is by design just because like neither one of us is kind of set up right now to be I feel like the best collaborators that we would want to be, I both like financially, time wise, and just like being able to set up a system that we would feel really good about like what it looks like to collaborate and like share in ownership. Like I don't,
Hmm.
we have just haven't had like the brain space to really like think about what that would look like. But I mean, Quinn's great. You should reach out to Quinn.
Well, it's almost time for PAX Unplugged, so I'll come
Yes.
and
Oh yeah. Yeah. You should talk in person. Yeah.
I'll
And
come meet.
beyond that, I'll think about that. I'll think if I have any, lino cut artists who could make great art for your
Or
next game.
or just the idea of that of like, I've Louisville's a big enough town. There's somebody making lino. I mean, I know there's somebody making lino cuts because I've been to the flea market and I've seen them do it. So like,
Hmm.
what is that connection, right? What is
Yeah.
the broadening that broadening broadening that connection of like local scene and
Yeah.
I was talking earlier about the like local scene at the con and seeing like groups cross-pollinate and collaborations form. So like maybe there's more of that can happen, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Nerd communities, I mean, the likelihood that somebody who's at like a nerdy felting festival might also like role-playing games is, I think, higher than somebody who's at like a convention for people who install fancy kitchen sinks. Although that's me making a judgment because I am always surprised by who plays tabletop role-playing games. So,
Pretty much everybody, I think, plays
yeah.
tabletop role playing. Yeah. Uh, Hannah, thank you so much for your time this
Thanks,
afternoon. We're
Matt.
kind of
Thank you.
gonna wrap up here. I think it's been a pleasure to talk to you, get to know you a little bit more in a two-way format rather than as me just listening to you and I can't reply. And I've been on your Discord, so it's like this isn't we're not total strangers, but it's
No.
still been nice to like have a sustained conversation with you. Please tell my viewers where they can find TurtleBun, your work, where you want to be, where they can give you their hard-earned dollars in whatever denominations they prefer. Where can you be found online?
Turtlebun.com is where you can buy our games. Also, Turtlebun on itch.io if you prefer PDFs. And we have Design Doc that comes out every other week, which we talk about game design. We talk about what it's like to try to make a living making games or other creative projects. So, I mean, Design Doc is a really good way to kind of like follow along and stay on the journey if you like it.
Excellent. I will put links to those things in the description of this video, probably also to the video last year with Evan,
Oh
and
yeah.
probably to your crowdfunding for Escape from Wonderland, where people can follow along after the fact and see it develop. So,
Thank you. We will finish eventually. We'll finish eventually.
no pressure for me. No pressure for me.
No pressure felt.
It's like you just said. It's like join the journey, and if you like the journey, stay for the journey.
Stay for the rest of the journey. Stay
Yeah,
for
stay for
new
the.
journeys. Yeah.
Mhm. Again, thank you for doing this with me. Thank you everybody who watched. I don't know, what are your ideas for collaborations? Who would you like to see? Either Wet Ink or Turtle Bun or Turtle Bun and Wet Ink plus a third person. What are some collaborations you want to see? Put them in the comments so we
Yeah.
can.
What are your favorite mid 90s video games that
Ooh.
did ambitious things with pixels?
Uh, what should come back? Like which which of those is ripe for a TTRPG adaptation?
Yes. Yes. Please say.
I no ideas are easy, and it's the execution part that's hard. So, but give us your ideas. Give us your ideas.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, Hannah.